Hi, everybody. Apparently you didn't have anything better to do with your life than to listen to me talk about mine. And so I don't really, know what to say. It's always a little awkward to just start launching about your own life. But that's kind of what I'm going to do here today, I guess, in a sense. I had originally thought that something like this would be where the folks at LP would sort of be moderating and asking me questions, and then I would answer the questions. Turns out it's more like I'm just going to talk about my life, but I would still prefer it actually if it could be a little more interactive. And both Jules from LP and Jerry, who I need to thank right off the bat for all of their effort in making this whole series happen, not just mine today, because it's a lot of work, guys, to organize it and get it out there. Apparently, like, they can get your little messages if you want to sort of message in. So if you have a question along the way, or you want to complain about my shirt or whatever the particular item of the day might be, feel free to do that, and then I'll try to answer as I go, because I can sort of see the little messages on the chat screen, or hopefully that's the case. So I'm gonna jump around a little bit, but I think that one of the things that might be sort of helpful about somebody like Mike Spiro's life in relation particularly to percussion and Latin percussion and LP. After all, I'm an Anglo-American. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and I grew up on R&B. So most of the questions that usually come to me throughout my career when I do clinics and workshops and guest artist things and so forth is, well, how does a guy like you end up playing Cuban music and Latin percussion? And so I want to sort of start by going all the way back a little bit to my beginning days, because I do think to some degree my life is might help some other people when they're questioning themselves about what they're doing and what they want to do with their life. I didn't start playing music until I was 19. That is a regret of mine, from the standpoint that all of the people I ended up playing with, all started when they were, started playing guitar when I was 8, or I started playing drums when I was 10. And so I've always felt that my whole life I was playing catch up, because I didn't even start till I was 19. But the main thing is that I wanted to share was that I grew up on American music, and in particular, I grew up on Motown. Not so much rock and roll, but rather African American music. I just lived in neighborhoods. Well, a lot of my friends were African Americans, and so I grew up on James Brown and Aretha Franklin and the Four Tops and Smokey Robinson and the Temptations. And so I wouldn't have known a Cuban song or beat or rhythm if my life depended on it. So when I first started to play, at the time, what I thought were the congos, only later to find out, of course, that it was the tumbadora or the conga, I wanted to be Aretha Franklin's conga player. Like, that would have been my dream gig. And in fact, even though I'm sort of known, however I might be known by people around the world as, the folklore guy, James Brown still wins hands down. He's the winner, period, for me. And then what happened was that after trying to play in some groups with no technique, no skills, no knowledge, and I was literally beating my hands up, bad, like injuring myself, because back I'm 69 years old, so I started playing basically around 1971. And even if you weren't around at that time, you can imagine how loud the music was. This is, the era of rock music. And you'd come home from playing and your hands would be hamburger meat. And I knew that something was wrong, and I set out to try to find a teacher. And in that process, my very first teacher, or one of my first teachers, gave me a record that was a Bible at the time. I don't know if any of you today would have ever heard about it. And it was on side A. Remember, records were vinyl and there was an A and a B. That's how old I am. The A side was Papín y sus rumberos, and with that later, of course, became Los Papines. And the other side was the Guaguancó Matancero, which was the group that became Los Muñequitos de Matanzas. And he said, here, take this record home. Listen to it. All right, so I'm now known as the Cuban, folklore, rumba, bata guy. I took that record home and went, what a bunch of racket. So I pardon me, I'm answering Jules, and I'll let you know, Jules, when time for the photo, I promise. So anyhow, sorry about that, everybody. I took that home, and I didn't like it at all. It was just a bunch of racket to me because I couldn't understand what was going on. It sounded like a construction site, and I was like, well, okay, why is this guy giving me this? And since I don't have that much time today, the bottom line is I kept listening to it almost out of intellectual curiosity. Like, these people started at the same time and they ended at the same time. So I don't know what's going on, but they sure do. And the more I listened to it, the more it started to somehow get inside my brain. And I started to go, man, this is kind of cool. What is this stuff? And so I share that with everybody to say that that idea that you may or may not like a certain kind of music or a certain kind of art or a certain kind of food, you never know when things are going to click inside of you and inside of your heart and inside of your head. So to sort of cut to the chase before I sort of launch about specifics, I then got exposed from that initial exposure to Cuban folkloric music that I didn't understand much of. That led me to discover what at the time would have been called salsa, Latin dance music here in the United States. That led me to discover that the roots of that were in Cuba. Then I came to understand that to be a good salsero, you had to be a rumbero. And to be a good rumbero, actually, you should be a bata player. Not should, but it would sure help. So my whole career and life has been going backwards in time, if you will, rather than forwards in time, to study and learn the music both of Cuba and Brazil. But as everybody else is going into the 21st century, I'm back in the 19th century and still studying and learning. So with that being said, I'm going to ask Jules to put up the first picture. And there I am in 1972 in Santa Cruz, California, in my very first salsa band. Guys, hang on a minute. I have to access a document that I now thought I had saved and hadn't. Bear with me, everybody. I apologize. I'm so sorry. There it is. Okay. So that's Santa Cruz, California, 1972. And I played in the very first salsa band that ever existed in Santa Cruz, California, called 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗘𝗦. And we were terrible. We were awful because we had no clue what we were doing, but we sure had a love for what we were trying to do. And so, Jules, would you put that up one more time? If you, yeah. God, I was skinny and didn't have gray hair. Look at that. You'll notice 𝗟𝗑𝗏 timbales and 𝗟𝗑𝗏 cowbells. I've been playing 𝗟𝗑 gear since basically when I could first shave. There it is. And then the second photo, Jules, if you'll put that one up. Now it's, I went to Seattle, Washington in the end of the 1970s to go to graduate school in ethnomusicology. And I quit graduate school to move to San Francisco in 1980 to study bata drums, in fact. I didn't intend to quit graduate school, but it turned out that way. And I was blessed enough to join a band called the Orchestra Batachanga. It's interesting, by the way, that in both of those photos, I'm playing timbales, even though I consider myself a conga player. But anyhow, the Orchestra Batachanga, the word Batachanga, was a word we put together of bata drums with the charanga style of Cuban music. And we were very young, but that band featured a number of people that many of you would know. Obviously, John Santos, you'd know that name if you play percussion. John was a part of that group. Harold Muñiz was a part of that group. And the great Rebecca Mauleon, who's a pianist, not a percussionist, but known for not only her playing, but her publications and so forth. She was in that band. And that band was my school. I mean, they were much more experienced at the time than I was in Latin music and Cuban music, and I had a chance to if there's a picture about Batachanga, it says Jules, put it up there, because yeah, that's our first record that I co-produced with John Santos. Second from the left, you can see John, Rebecca's in the front. And we were pretty cutting edge, if I may say so. That band led me to do a lot of studying and learning, and really kind of helped me forge my career. So those are kind of the early days. And then, so I'm in San Francisco and I played with salsa bands, and I discovered Brazilian music. Well, I discovered it before I moved to San Francisco, but really got into it in San Francisco. And so I was lucky enough, back then there were lots of gigs and there were lots of recording sessions. And so I actually kind of had a career playing Latin jazz, playing salsa, playing Brazilian music, broadening my horizons, and which sort of then takes me to, I guess, what we'd say is my body of work, or some of the things that maybe I would share with you about my life. The first, and for me probably the most important, is a recording that I made with Mark Lamson, the gentleman who currently lives in San Diego. Actually, he's from there, been there all his whole life. And that recording is called 𝗟𝗏𝗘𝗦. And 𝗟𝗏𝗘𝗦 is intentionally, there is the cover of it. 𝗟𝗏𝗘𝗦, musical interplay of Cuba and Brazil, if you can read the the little ribbon that goes there. And you may notice, if you know anything about these the cultures of Cuba and Brazil, the Orisha Chango is represented on the left, and the Orisha Oshun, not Ochun, is Oshun because she's from Brazil. And this was a recording that tried to demonstrate the relationship of the musics of Cuba and Brazil as part of the African diaspora coming from Africa because of the slave trade, of course, but the slave trade throughout the Americas. And what I had started to discover was that in my own playing and in my own studying, that there was so much in common between the musics of these two places, but nobody had ever documented it. Nobody had ever written music that was combining these two, because it was so obvious to me that they could and should be combined and have their roots traced back particularly to Nigeria. And that CD ended up sort of becoming my I don't know, my trade. Like when I'm long gone, which probably will be next week, that'll probably be the one part of my work that really will stand the test of time, I think. It's pretty seminal recording, and wherever I go in the world, musicians and percussionists who are into that kind of music, the folkloric musics of Cuba and Brazil, they search me out, they know about me, they invite me into their home. It's a pretty amazing thing. I can be literally in Turkey and doing a clinic or a workshop, and all these people will show up and invite me to their home and take me in and treat me like their family, and it's an amazing kind of thing. So that CD is probably, well, very important to me. Then I'm going to jump around a little bit I'm going to talk about a CD that came out only 2 years ago called Bagwe. And I'm doing that because I'm kind of known as the guy. Jules, you can put that one up if you want. That's backstage. Actually, that's cool. That's backstage at the CD release of the CD I made called Bagwe, which was not a combining of different genres and styles, but a CD that I made with my brother Jose Luis Gomez and produced by my brother in the front in sunglasses, Jesus Diaz. There was a straight up rumba record. No like, mixing of anything, rumba. And I got nominated, or we got nominated for a 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗘𝗦 award. The 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗘𝗦 was like the Cuban Grammys. So for me, I have 10 Grammy nominations. I've lost every time. So according to my wife, I'm a loser. And those obviously mean a great deal to me, but to be nominated in Cuba for a Cuban Grammy award is kind of a real honor for me, since obviously I'm a foreigner and not from there. And so I wanted to mention that. And that photo that Jules put up is backstage of our CD release gig. And Jules, can you put that up just one more time really quick? This photo is pretty amazing because some of my teachers from Cuba are there. Some of my contemporaries from Cuba are there. My son is in it because my son is a great percussionist, was on the gig. So this photo kind of represents me and my relationship with Cuba, both Cubans in the United States, Cuba, me in Cuba. I started traveling to Cuba in 1984 when it was really illegal. And today there's no time really to go into all the war stories, but yeah, I got arrested there, and because it was kind of illegal, and all kinds of stories about going there and meeting not only folkloric musicians, but I met 𝗟𝗣𝗙𝗘𝗦 in 1985 in Cuba. 𝗟𝗣𝗙𝗘𝗦 and I have been friends for decades, and just friends, actually. I met all the guys from 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗘𝗦 Oriental, one of the great charanga groups in Cuba. So I have all kinds of relationships from my travels to Cuba with popular musicians, folkloric musicians, and so forth. So I wanted to mention that CD. Now I'm going to skip around and go kind of a different year. Jules, would you put up, I think it's yeah. So Talking Drums. That's a group, if you look at, that's the cover of our DVD. And if you look up at the top, you'll see David Garibaldi, Michael Spiro, and Jesus Diaz. That was a seminal group in my life. The three of us were obviously not the first percussion group ever, but maybe the first percussion group of two percussionists and a drum set player. David Garibaldi, of course, from the Tower of Power. Jesus Diaz, internationally known percussionist, producer, just amazing musician across the board. And I should say, I think I want to add that he and I currently have have had for now over 10 years an online percussion education site called congamasterclass.com. He and I have been playing together forever. We're lifelong brothers. And so Talking Drums was a trio that traveled around the world, actually. We published 2 books and a DVD where the idea was to combine the funk of Dave Garibaldi, and, you know, if you say the word funk, how do you not say David Garibaldi? And with Afro-Cuban percussion. That group for me was so awesome to be able to travel the world and play really cutting edge music. I'll just put it this way. You go on stage with Dave Garibaldi and Jesus Diaz, you better bring your A game, because if you don't, they're going to bury you on the bandstand. It's going to be very, very embarrassing. So I cherish my time in that group. I cherish the work that we put out. And so on that note, that book cover was 1997. And now we'll come back to 2019. And there is a photo of my protege, if you will. I hope he's would allow me to say that. His name is Joe Galvin, and he and I published a book on the music of the 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗘𝗦 people in Matanzas, Cuba. This is some pretty esoteric percussion, folks, but everybody knows about bata drums and rumba and bembe, but the 𝗟𝗓𝗓 is a whole other world of music and percussion. And we published a book. Is the cover of the book there, Jules? I'm not sure. Can you hit the next? Oh no, it's not. It's the people. You could put up the next photo. That'd be fine. Yeah, that's the recording session in Matanzas, Cuba. You can see Joe in the green shirt with the white hat, and I'm behind him. That's the recording session. That's the music that goes along with the book that we published on 𝗟𝗓𝗓 music. And I'm just trying to give you this kind of overview of, I've published books on my own personal book, books, plural, on conga drumming. And then I've written books on like this esoteric music, the 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗏. I have books of transcriptions of the great masters, if you will, from Mongo Santa Maria to Tata Jmenez and so forth. So I've done this whole different kind of stuff, separate then from bands and Latin jazz recordings and those things that, as I say, have brought me, a lot of recognition. Again, I'm not bragging. It's just kind of nice. If you have 10 Grammy nominations, it's kind of a big deal, I guess. And I have all kinds of recordings, quintet settings and big band settings and so forth, of different kinds of music, popular music, folkloric music that are a part of my body of work. So let's go on then to a couple of different groups. I mentioned talking drums, and my band, Orchestra 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗏, not my band, the band I was in, the Orchestra 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗏. And there were two other ones that I wanted to mention because they are current, or groups that I'm still currently in. Jules, would you put up the first picture? This is the Conjunto Caravali. We don't play often because if you look, I'm in the middle playing the conga drum, and if you look to my right, you will see Perrazzo, obviously international star, and I'm not making a joke, literally international star, brilliant musician. Obviously, Santana's timbale player. What a lot of people don't know is that Carl is one of the great bongoceros on the planet. And Carl and I have co-led a band, this band Conjunto Caravali, for a long, 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 long time. And that band is intentionally a throwback to the conjunto style of Cuban music. There's no timbale player. It's just conga drums, the tumbadora, and the bongo. And that band still exists. Carl and I remain dearest of friends. He's a hero of mine. I adore him as a human. I adore him as a musician. And that band still exists, but we don't get to play very often because when we're not in a pandemic, Santana's always on the road, and we have to try to fit our gigs in between when Santana comes home off the road. So I wanted to show you that. And then the other band that I co-lead to this day, Jules, if you put up the next photo, is the Orquesta La Moderna Tradición. This band might be the last remaining charanga group in the United States. I can't say that for sure, but that's where it's Cuban music, but instead of horns, it's strings, as you can see, cello, 2 violins, and woodwinds. So the flute's kind of in the back, and in the front you see a clarinet player if you look really closely. And that band still exists, and I co-lead that band, and so I wanted to just kind of put that one up. We also have several recordings out, so obviously we're still kind of in a pandemic. So when I say these bands still exist, I'm hoping that that will still be true, 2 months from now or 3 months from now, whenever it is we all finally, hopefully, come back to some kind of life, normal life. And those two groups are a part of my current work. So one of the things that I've always done, I'm going to move on now to another topic. One of the things I've always done, I mentioned my teaching website, congamasterclass.com. and that Talking Drums had published a bunch of books and DVDs. And folks, you won't believe it, but this is the day that the gardener decided to leaf blow my neighborhood. Nothing I can do about it, guys. I'm so sorry. But I've been teaching my whole life, not because I even set out to be a teacher, but, you know, people come up to you at a gig and go, hey, do you teach? And you go, well, I don't know. I hadn't thought about it. Well, would you show me this or would you show me that? And then what happens is, next thing you know, like, you build up this clientele of students. And what are you going to do? Next thing you know, you're like supplementing your playing income with a teaching income. And so even though I went to graduate school and never completed my degree, my graduate degree, I ended up with a teaching gig. I was a professor for over a decade at, believe it or not, Indiana University. So I live in San Francisco, but I commuted to Bloomington, Indiana to teach in their percussion department. And so I think Jules has 2 photos of sort of my life. So here's me directing the Latin Jazz Ensemble, which, if you notice, was a big band. And that was a wonderful experience for me to stand in the middle of a big band. If you've never gotten the opportunity to do that, and few of us now have that opportunity, because big bands, of course, nobody can afford to keep a big band alive. But to be able to direct an ensemble like that was very, very thrilling for me. And then I was able to recruit my running partner, Wayne Wallace, to also teach at Indiana. And then we ended up co-leading that band. And that led to a recording that we did together called 𝗟𝗓𝗦 𝗟𝗏, that brought us a Grammy nomination. That was not just a big band, but then included an orchestra. So that CD actually is like a 50-piece orchestra kind of recording, with musicians and faculty from there and string players from there as well. And I'm very, very proud of that. And then the next photo, if Jules, is I also then directed the Brazilian percussion ensemble, and that's us performing outdoors at some event. According to my notes, that was 2010. So that would have been pretty soon after. I started there in 2008, and I retired from that position in 2019. But being a professor and being in the academy was the most interesting experience, not to mention commuting. And it's a lot harder to commute to Bloomington, Indiana, than to just fly all the way across the country, because there's no direct flight really from San Francisco to Indianapolis. So you got to change planes, and then you got to drive from Indianapolis to Bloomington, and there's a 3-hour time difference. And I did that for 10 years. In retrospect, I have no idea how my body survived that. Obviously, it's evident my brain didn't, but my body did, because I'm still here. So I just sort of wanted to include that in the life and times of Michael Spiro. And then the one advantage, as Jules points out in a little chat to me, is lots of frequent flyer miles. But instead of flying around the world with them, I just put those miles into the plane tickets back and forth, because once you get hired full time, they don't pay your commute, because if you don't want to move to Bloomington, Indiana, that's your problem. But anyhow, part of teaching, though, is that then you get called to do a bunch of workshops. And some of the workshops, you know, are maybe just you or one other person. But one of the great things about workshops is usually they're they are there's a faculty of a number of people, and then you're surrounded for the entire time. You know, these kind of workshops are like a week long. You're all familiar with them, like the summer workshop, or and they're usually a week long, and you're surrounded by the best of the best. And so you go to them not only to teach, but to be a student, to be around, whether it's a Brazilian workshop I teach every year at the California Brazil camp, which is in Northern California. And they bring the best of the best from Brazil. And so there's two photos that Jules picked. This is me with the great maestro Roman Diaz on the far left, and in the middle, Sandy Perez, who hails from Matanzas, Cuba, but now lives here in the U.S. I met Sandy when he was literally 11 years old on my first trip to Cuba. He is, I think, one of the most brilliant percussionists alive. And so again, the opportunity at these workshops to not just go, you know, teach other people, but to be a student, to be around the best of the best, where you're playing together every day, you're playing together all night at the parties, you're just infusing yourself with all these great musicians is a great thing. So that was one photo. I think there might be one more. Right. So this is a workshop I did in Banff, Canada. And in 1995, so you will notice no gray hair and skinny. I'm with, actually, I just noticed my friend Brian Rice, who lives here in the Bay Area, is way in the back. But if you look at the four Cuban gentlemen, this is some serious history here. This is 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗘𝗦, rest in peace. Iraquere's conga player for many years, and arguably, you know, one of the greatest conga players that's ever lived. That's not arguably, that's a fact. To his left is Toto Berriel, who was in both Afro-Cuba de Matanzas and the Muñequitos from Matanzas, Cuba. He currently lives in Vancouver. And to his left, the maestro Jose Luis Quintana, Changuito. And then in the front is Agustin Diaz, who remains the segundo chair of the Muñequitos de Matanzas. He's been in that chair for decades. And then there's this white guy from America down in the bottom of the left. Like, what an amazing opportunity for me. I actually was the director of the folkloric music program at that workshop. And then all day long, I just got to be a student and day and night with them. So these workshops have been a big part of my life and a great opportunity for me. So I'll go on now. Again, we don't have that much time. So another thing that you do in your life is you get to go out and do clinics, you know, at music stores, guitar centers, and Sam Ash's, and also, you know, at various universities and so forth. Hey, could you come do a clinic, be a guest artist at our school? Sure. And I picked two photos, or Jules did at any rate. And there I am doing a clinic in San Francisco. And I'm sort of not being facetious when I say one of the things that you can do at a clinic is you play the gear of the companies that endorse you. and you do that. I mean, I've been an LP endorsee for I don't even know how long, a long, long time. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of my relationship with LP. They've been incredibly good to me. And so one of the great things about clinics is you get to play the gear that you play and explain to people why you play that gear. And one of the things that you can see then, actually, Jules, I'll ask you to put that back up just for a sec, thanks, is my own signature instrument, if you will, the hi-hat 𝗟𝗣𝗙𝗘𝗦. And then the second photo that she just put up is the promo shot that we took at the Brooklyn Bridge. We all got in the car and drove to the Brooklyn Bridge, literally, so that Mike Spiro could hold out his Mike Spiro hi-hat 𝗟𝗣𝗙𝗘, because, of course, you can't cross that bridge unless you own the LP Mike Spiro hi-hat 𝗟𝗘𝗙𝗘. You're not allowed to cross the bridge. Anyhow, the point of all of that is that, and then you also saw my conga masterclass T-shirt and banner in the back. Clinics have always been a great way to not only share what you know, but do a little bit of business, talk about why you play what you play, and why you play it. So I wanted to include that part of my career in this whole thing. Then normally, I think when you might tell your life story, quote unquote, which I guess this kind of sort of is, you might start by talking about who your mentors were, but I thought that I would intentionally do this at the end, because as I get older, I'm 69, so not quite 70, but sure close enough. I become more and more conscious of and aware of my elders, my mentors, the people that literally shaped my life. I know that's a cliche and I apologize for that, but I don't know how else to put it. So Jules has very graciously allowed me to put up 3 different photos, because I want to talk about the people that done taught me. So the first one, on the far left, is Harold Munz, who I played in the Orchestra Batachanga with, and who was my bata teacher until the man in the middle came along. Francisco Aguavella. I don't have a lot of words to express what it's like I sat next to that guy for a decade while he beat the crap out of me. But you know, arguably the greatest folkloric drummer in the United States between 1960 and his passing a few years ago. He was a remarkable figure. He was old school. I mean, as old school as you want to get. Think the Russian ballet teacher with the cane, and that's how he was. But he trained me, taught me, never really through words. He was a very quiet man, but led always by his actions. And I'm all the cliches are appropriate. I'm honored to have been his student. So I had to mention him. Next, okay. It says birth of My Funamento. What does that mean? Well, many of you know about bata drums. LP makes bata drums. But they're fundamental bata drums are drums that aren't made in a factory. They are carved, and then they go through a long ceremony to to become sacred drums. The drums themselves are sacred, and to be able to play them, you have to go through a long ceremony, difficult ceremony, to be allowed to play them. And in this photo, particularly, there's two gentlemen I need to speak about. Well, okay, to the left, far left, is Mark Lamson, the guy that I did 𝗟𝗡𝗦𝗘 with. Next to his left is Regino Jmenez. Regino Jmenez was my bata teacher from Havana, Cuba, and he also became my godfather. He is the man that initiated me into this tradition that sacred bata drums are a part of. He has passed away. In front of him to the left is arguably the greatest folkloric drummer in the history of Cuba. I say arguably because how could you say that? But recognized in Cuba as the man, 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗥𝗢 𝗟𝗣𝗩𝗥𝗢, better known as 𝗟𝗑𝗏. He was the quinto player for the muñequitos, actually for the 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗥𝗢 Matancero that became the muñequitos. And he, My Funamento drums are born from his drums. They are birthed from his drums. He's the guy with the beer can or the metal can with a bunch of beer in it. The other gentlemen in this photo are all giants of Afro-Cuban folkloric music. The elder ones in this photo, there's 4 of them, have all passed away. The young man in the back with the white hat on, who you can only see half his face, he's the current director of the Muñequitos de Matanzas. And the guy in the blue shirt, that's Luis Cancino. And the guy in the blue shirt in the front, his name is Nandito, and he's a very, very integral and central figure of Afro-Cuban folkloric music in Matanzas, Cuba today. So this photo for me is like, that's my whole, that's me, that's my life, that's my life's history. And I guess the last photo is, again, Regino Jmenez. This photo is from the CD booklet that I produced of Regino and his group, 𝗟𝗏𝗦𝗡𝗏, which documents the style of Havana bata drumming at the end of the 20th century. The name of the CD, again, is 𝗟𝗏𝗦𝗡𝗏. Regino is the director, producer, musical producer of that project. And Jules is telling me that she has one more photo of Estela Vega. Let's look at that one. Yeah, so this is, look, that's my first trip to Cuba, 1984. That's his wife Sylvia on the left, and that's 𝗟𝗏𝗏 wearing the sunglasses that I gave him. They, obviously we don't have time today to talk about it all, but I went there completely, actually in retrospect, it was a really stupid thing to do from the standpoint that it was illegal to travel to Cuba in 1984. Things got kind of hairy when I was there because very, very few foreigners had ever gone to the town of Matanzas, Cuba. And needless to say, you can tell from this picture, it wasn't like I blended into the scenery. I pretty much stuck out like a sore thumb, and yet these people took me in like literally like I was their son. And my whole adult history is a part of all of going to Cuba and Brazil, but especially to Cuba, and learning from and being a part of their extended family and those lineages. Now I'm going to introduce 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗥𝗢, Zacharias, who is the artist relations gentleman for LP, and I guess there's some questions and stuff. So I'm going to turn it over to Jerry and see where this takes us.
Michael.
Hi, Jerry.
Hi. Thank you.
The other way around. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for spending your time with us. Really cool stories that you're telling us and sharing with us. So once again, thank you so much.
My honor, my privilege, actually.
Yeah, so we do have a few questions from the public. One I'd like to share with you is, who is an artist that most people don't know, but is someone that you think we should definitely check out?
Oh, my Lord. God, I'd have to kind of think about that. In the United States or anywhere?
That's a good question. They didn't really specify. They just said,
well,
yeah.
I would be perhaps a little more broad in a sense. I think that that Cuba, because we still don't have a relationship, we almost had political relationship with Cuba under Obama, and then we won't make it political, but we know about the last 4 years. Almost all of the folkloric groups in Cuba have unbelievably brilliant percussionists and artists that we don't know about because we don't know about those groups. So rather than specific people, I would rather, because for example, people may not know that Pedrito Martinez, who's, this genius percussionist, but when he was in Cuba, you never would have known about Pedrito because you didn't even know about the group like 𝗟𝗜𝗦𝗛𝗘𝗦, 𝗟𝗑𝗩 that he played with. So I would rather kind of turn that question into, go find out about, first of all, the mainstay for decades folkloric groups from Cuba whose drummers you can then watch and learn and study from. Los Muñequitos de Matanzas, Afro-Cuba de Matanzas. In Havana, 𝗟𝗜𝗦𝗛𝗑, 𝗟𝗑𝗩 and I think currently my favorite folkloric group is a group called 𝗟𝗑𝗩𝗪 del Monte that actually Pedrito records with actually quite a bit as he goes back and forth, from the U.S. to Cuba. And so rather than one person, I would simply say, look for these groups, and the same might be true even in the popular music category, like Habana de Primera might be considered, it's certainly one of the most important, timba Latin music groups from Cuba. Now, there is some turnover in these groups, of course, but go check out the drummers, in the current, I'll call them salsa groups from Cuba. You're going to find just one drummer after another who's just stupidly brilliant. So I know that doesn't quite answer the question, but I'd rather approach it from that standpoint than a particular person.
Thank you. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. No. One more question here from the public. This one comes from Jamie Ryan, who says, was there a rhythmic style from Cuba and from Brazil that initially perked up your ears to think that the shared Yoruba ancestry might produce something musically different?
Yeah. And I see that came from Jamie Ryan, and so I paid him $20 to ask me that question. Yeah, actually, well, I don't know if it was one style per se, but there's a style of music in Cuba known as 𝗟𝗑𝗓. Gets spelled differently. Sometimes it's Iyesa, sometimes it's Yeza. And there's a bata rhythm with that name, and then there's an actual genre of music with that name. And I was listening to that and going, gee, that sounds a lot kind of like a Cuban conga de comparsa. And then the next thing you know, I'm listening to Brazilian music and I'm hearing big, 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 big. And I'm going, wait, that's almost the same thing. I mean, it's not identical, but boy, if those aren't kissing cousins, then I don't know what is.
Right.
And in fact, everybody, I talked obviously a lot about my recording Bataquetu, and the actual first piece on that record is the very first time that Mark Lamson and I went in the studio to experiment with Cuban and Brazilian percussion music, and the 𝗟𝗑𝗓 samba connection was the first attempt at, or was the first thing that inspired us to try to make these connections. And that turned out to be the very first thing that you hear on that CD was like, there we go. And we didn't have any idea what it would sound like, meaning everything was a complete experiment. And then when we played it back, we went, oh my God, look at that. It totally works. And because back then you couldn't really pre-produce things the way you can today. So that would be the answer to that question.
Oh, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So I have a lot of conversations with a lot of your students, and they speak so highly of you, and they always tell me what an amazing teacher you are, and it's just really cool to talk about what they learn from you. And what's your approach to teaching? And like when somebody's taking one of your classes, what are some of the lessons, the most important ones that they walk away from?
I'd like to think, and this may not be the answer that you think that somebody might give. I care about your learning only and as much as you care about your learning. So the lesson is, if you commit, I'll commit. And if you won't commit, then why should I care? I think I'm the only professor ever that told a student, oh, you're not prepared for your lesson today? Fabulous. I just got a free hour. Bye. And they go, you're not mad? And I go, why should I be mad? You're a grown adult. Yeah. You came to your lesson unprepared. Right. That's totally your business. I got my own problems. Like I haven't gone grocery shopping in a week, and now I get to go grocery shopping. So, hey, come back prepared next week while you're at it. Meaning learning is a commitment that you have to make on your own, because what that means then is, if you're committed to your own learning, it's not, oh, my teacher's going to tell me what to learn, or tell me what to research, or tell me what to do. It's, I have to figure that out for myself. So, for example, if you come take a private lesson from me, I don't have an agenda. My first question to you, you walk in the door, I say, hi, how are you? You say, fine. I say, what do you want to know? And if you go, oh, I don't know, you're the teacher, then that tells me you haven't thought, you're going to pay me money, but you haven't thought about what it is you want to know.
Right.
Now you can say, I'm a literal beginner. I don't know what I don't know. That's fine. But I've never been one of those guys that that will only, teach advanced players. I just want committed students. If I want to start learning chemistry tomorrow, I don't want a chemistry teacher to tell me, well, I'm not going to teach you because you're a beginner. No, why I'm here. I've just told you I want to learn this. Then I have to demonstrate through my own actions as the student that I'm committed to learning chemistry. And if I do that, yes, then I need you to commit to me. So I always told students, which got me in trouble with a lot of my academic colleagues, if you're absolutely committed, you can call me at 1 o'clock in the morning and come up to my house and ask me a bunch of questions. Because that's how committed I've been in my life to learn what I know. Literally being put in jail in Cuba because I wanted to learn that bata rhythm. That's a pretty serious level of commitment.
I love that story, by the way. That's good.
Well, in retrospect, I can laugh at it. But the point is that I think the real lesson between teacher and student has to be, I'm here for you 24/7 if you're here for you 24/7. But if you aren't, why should I be?
Yeah.
Now, one last thing, and then I'll shut up, which is, but that's also why you can't put me in front of a 7th grader because, kids need to be motivated. Kids have to have teachers who do that. So you don't put me in front of a 5th grade class. I mean, I can go do the 1 hour, hi kids, this is the Congo drum and so forth. But as far as ongoing teaching, no. I can teach adults because the whole thing is, and we're saying colleges at least like to think that if you're over 18, you're an adult. I don't know whether I agree with that, but the point is that at that level or that age, your learning is on you. My job is to give you the information. But learning is a lifelong thing that requires responsibility, dedication, and sacrifice. So I know that's probably not the answer you thought I was going to give.
That's perfect.
It's what I believe.
Put. Absolutely. Beautifully put. Exactly. I think that revolves around about everything that we do in our lives, actually, right? Anything that we're passionate about. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in a relationship, not even a marriage, just friends. Yeah. I'm committed to this friendship as much as you're committed to this friendship. But if you blow me off, well, then what do you want from me?
Exactly. Yeah. It's a dedication, passion, time and energy. Everything is.
Yeah. And the only time that doesn't come into play is you have to be committed to your children, whether they want to give you the time of day or not, because that's a responsibility that you accepted as a parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a parent. Yeah. But in terms of teaching and learning, I'm here for you if you're here for you.
Absolutely. Well put too. Yeah, especially when I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old daughter. So
right.
I know exactly.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. And it only gets worse, homie. Don't get better.
Speaking of family, Remy, tell us, I mean, I'm pretty sure you put a lot of effort into teaching him and mentoring him as well. I mean, you've learned from so many mentors, as you already shown us. And so I'm pretty sure you apply all that knowledge as well as a parent, as an educator. Yeah.
I mean, Remy, by the way, everybody, is my son. He's now 31. But Remy is a musician completely in his own right now. Much the way, for example, I'll mention 2, 𝗟𝗡𝗩 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗏 Sr., but then his Wally Jr. and his other sons, who at the moment I'm drawing a blank. But anyhow, are musicians completely on their own right. And then Pete Escovedo, but Sheila and Peter Michael and Juan, musicians in their own right. So, I want to be careful here to not go, yeah, Remy's great because of me. No, Remy's great because of Remy. But Remy is the timbale player in La Moderna Tradición, the charanga band that I talked about a little while ago. Is there any greater joy in life than being able to go to a gig with your kid? Like, how awesome is that, right?
Beautiful.
And many of those people, my mentors, even the ones from Cuba, have lived in my home for weeks or months, and as my son was growing up. So my son, yes, of course, I've taught my son, of course, but not only the Cubans, but Dave Garibaldi, Jesus Diaz, 𝗟𝗣𝗩𝗪𝗡, who is my Brazilian teacher, colleague, mentor, buddy, have all, I could go on and on and on, have been in his life literally since he was born. So it does take a village. Yes, Hillary Clinton. And that village raised my son musically. And so, I'm terribly proud of him, and I have to take some credit, but not as much as one might think. The same way that I think Pete Escovedo would say, of course I taught Sheila, but, all these other people taught Sheila, her Uncle Coke and Billy Cobham and this one and that one and the other. And so she became who she is by virtue of her own efforts and her, her own surroundings. So thank you for letting me brag on my kid, because I think my kid is super cool, but I can only claim X amount of credit on that one.
Oh man, absolutely. Family is very important now, to all of us, but yeah, amazing. So I'd really like to talk about now your documentary, which we actually have a preview as well. It's called Los Bandos, Rumba, and Cazuela, and we do have a trailer here I'd like to showcase.
A mí la rumba es mi vida, es parte de mi vida. Nosotros los manaceros cuando cantamos, cantamos con ritmo alegre y buen compás. Cuando se tocaba guaguancó, estaba un hombre que se llamaba Regino Jmenez tocando el 6x8, un 6x8 de cajón. Salía con una viola y un cajoncito para ir a las 12 de la noche a visitar a todas las personas que pertenecían al bando azul. Era un recorrido en el que se iba engalanando la poética, se iba engalanando las virtudes de cada uno de los cantos y de la composición social que tuvo el bando azul. Gloria de la ciudad de Matanzas y de Cuba, porque a través de los cantos expresaba precisamente alegría, ritmo y buen compás. Una sincera amistad. A mí esa rumba me encantaba, siempre me encantó esa rumba. Y vaya, he logrado mi objetivo, porque yo quería grabar esa rumba y la mía se me dio. ¿Viste? Se me dio.
And that is out now.
Wow. It is out now. The way you can see it, it's a little complicated when you're just a two-person company, getting stuff out there. If you go to congamasterclass.com and you click on the videos, you can find it there. just click on the Los Bandos thing and it'll tell you what to do. If I can brag for a sec, I mentioned that my CD, My Bagwe, was nominated for a 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗘𝗦 in 2019. And that film was nominated this year for a 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗘𝗦, Best Musical Documentary. So I have 2 of them, which is shocking. But I wanna just say really quick, the woman who says, I always wanted to record that rumba. I mentioned that Regino Jmenez was the man that initiated me into the tradition that the bata drums are a part of. And that woman is my godmother. She is the woman that co-initiated me. Her name is Dolores Perez Herrera. And she, along with actually almost every single other person in that video, she's now retired, but she was a lead singer and lead dancer for 𝗟𝗩𝗪𝗘𝗦 Matanzas. And everybody in that video almost everybody is blood family. It's the aunts and the nephews and the sons and they're all collectively either in 𝗟𝗩𝗪𝗘𝗦 or Los Muñequitos de Matanzas. And that whole video is simply documenting, because she and the male guy who was speaking he's the lead singer for the Muñequitos, but they're now 76 and 75 years old respectively. And they were the ones that remembered all those old songs, old rumbas that's the material that gave birth to contemporary rumba, to all the rumba whether it was Mongo Santa Maria in the 60s or when Armando Perrazzo was playing with Mongo, back in the day. These rumbas were literally the root of all of that. And I was able to document that along with my buddy Joe Galvin, my protege, who now has my job at Indiana University. And I'm just, even that little trailer, I'm so moved because that's all family. That's like literally, and that's my family. And I don't mean, look, guys, I'm not saying that I live in San Francisco, California. I don't live in Matanzas, Cuba. I don't have to fight the struggles that they have to put food on their table. But I'm their adopted son. And that I can say with pride and great humility. And this was the one gift that I felt I could give them with my resources and my skills or knowledge as, the musician, producer, etc., to help them document their lineage, their history, where they come from. So I'm incredibly proud of that. And I really thank you, Jerry, for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about that, just because it means a lot to me. And by the way, folks, that thing is rocking. Go to CongoMasterclass.com, click on Los Bandos, check it out. It's the real deal. It's the real deal.
Please, I saw it last night and it was wonderful. I loved it. I mean,
great. Thank you, Jerry.
Incredible. Yeah, guys, please go check it out. There's a gentleman in there who said it's very important to preserve this type of music. He said, primero porque educa, number one, because it educates. Segundo, porque fue un parte de los tradicionales de Matancera. It's a part of the tradition of Matancera. And number three, tercero, si no respetas el pasado, no sabes cómo fortalecer el futuro. And I thought that was beautiful. If you don't respect the past, then you will never know how to strengthen the future. And I thought that was well put and beautifully said. Yeah. And just an incredible, powerful documentary as well. But you could see a lot of that tradition and culture and that goes way back. So it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. There, in a sense, there's no LP without that, right? I mean, because again, the folkloric music is what gives birth to the popular music, which is what gave birth to Martin Cohen going, hey, I'm going to invent a fiberglass Congo drum, etc. And so then from there, the Patatos and the Tito Puentes and Giovanni Hidalgo's and so forth. All of that comes because of the past.
Exactly. And it has to do with our future, it has to do with the present. And so it all ties it all in. So it's beautifully well done. Incredible.
Thank you, Jer.
Beautiful documentary.
Thank you.
Michael, thank you so much for your time. You are loved. You're appreciated here at LP. You are a dear friend. You are an incredible mentor, musician, artist, everything. We love you very much. I can't thank you enough for your time and for everything you've done for us as well.
I'm humbled. I really don't know why anybody didn't have something better to do today if they were tuning in, but I'm so appreciative. You know, and let's maybe end it with this. No one person accomplishes anything. It's always about community, my mentors and so forth and so on, but also LP has been nothing but supportive of me from day one. I love you guys. You've been literally a gift to me. So I am but your mirror, and we'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much. And then, of course, everybody, if you guys want to check out where we could find you, we have social media, we have our website, www.𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥𝗡.
That production company is what made the documentary. That's why that's there.
Beautiful.
Good.
And we could also find you on Facebook as well.
Yeah. All that.
And of course, you're always a phone call away from
right. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you. And Jules, thank you. Can't thank you enough for all your work.
Jules makes this whole thing happen. Trust me.
Yep. I talk to everybody soon. Ciao.
Thank you.